have a wonderful Christmas? Even the answer we expect is included in the question, isn't it? But I wonder if, judging by some of the comedies and the movies that come out around Christmas time, if maybe the truth isn't somewhat different. Because why do we laugh? If it's not because there isn't an element of truth in all of that chaos that goes on around the Christmas time. I'll share with you a little bit of what I remember from early Christmases. It generally started around July. Mom or someone in the family would start calling around. What did we decide to do last Christmas? Where are we going to meet? How are we going to do all this? Nobody bothered to write it down because for sure we would remember it come next year. But 6 months later, we've all forgotten. As the months roll by, in October leads into November, into December, it's gift buying time, and the money crunch begins. Now, who do we have to buy presents for? Who didn't get us Christmas presents last year? How are we supposed to exchange? And money was tight, and it wasn't that easy, and led to a little conflict between Mom and Dad. Then the holidays started, the kids got out of school, and the kids were driving Mom and Dad crazy, and Mom and Dad were praying that school would be just a little bit longer. The days came, and everybody piled into the car, and the car started off, and pretty soon someone in the car realized that they'd forgotten something that they just could not live without. So turning around, we would go, and we'd go back and get that very important item. And then we would head off to Grandma's house, or wherever it was that we were headed, only to find that the cousins had beaten us there, and every room in the house was taken. But it's okay. There's an inflatable mattress that you can put in the living room. Merry Christmas. What fun. And it was exciting to see everybody, and everybody was excited to see everybody, and there was gifts under the tree. And the men, especially the older men, would go off to their corner, usually right in front of the TV, in the living room, and talk about the 3 C's. Cows, corn, and cars. Who had the tallest corn at the 4th of July? Who had the fastest car in high school? Who had the most cows in the corn? It was much more fun being in the kitchen where the women were cooking, and that's in my house, that's the way it was. The women went to the kitchen. The conversations were far more interesting in the kitchen. And if you were good, Mom or especially Grandma would let you try a little bit. Then the gifts would be opened. And then the arguments began. Where is everybody going to sleep? Who's going to play with who? And this one's not getting along with that one. And Christmas. But as much chaos as there is, and I know some of you have shared with me your stories, that Christmas can be difficult for many different reasons. Christmases can be hard. I want you to think a little bit about that first Christmas. I know we tend to glorify it, and we tend to blow it up bigger than life, but let me retell the story, and I'll take a little license with it, so bear with me. But I think we need to hear the story in a slightly different light. That first Christmas, how did it begin? A young teenage girl finds herself pregnant She's not a boyfriend, a fiancé, but he's not the father. She's scared. She is scared out of her mind. What is she going to do? Her family's going to disown her. Until the angel comes and says, don't worry, Mary. That little baby within you is conceived of the Holy Spirit. This is the way it was meant to be. This is what God has ordained. So Mary's okay, but then the boy finds out. Joseph finds out that his betrothed, his fiancée, is pregnant, and he's pretty sure he's not the father. So he's going to divorce her quietly. You don't want any part of that. It would be an embarrassment for his family to include someone like that in his. He's scared. He's young. And so the angel has to go to Joseph now and says, Joseph, don't worry. This has been ordained. The child within her is special. It will be God, Emmanuel. This is ordained. Don't worry to take Mary as your wife. So they smoothed all that over, only for the emperor of Rome himself to get involved in the picture. Everyone throughout the region, throughout all of the Roman Empire, must go home to their hometown to be registered because they're taking the census count. And so Joseph has to take Mary, now very pregnant, back to a sleepy little village called Bethlehem. Because he's of the lineage of David, and that's where David came from. It's a small, sleepy little village, but when they get there, Mary fully pregnant, there's no room for her. They try at the inn, there's not a single place for them to find, so they go and find a place in the stable, and the little baby Jesus is born in a manger. And there's no big deal about that, really. Mary and Joseph are a poor family. Jesus was probably not the first poor baby to be born in a stable. Probably wasn't the last either. But there he was born. And then the shepherds came. Well, shepherds coming to a stable, that's not a big deal, really. I mean, where else are they going to go? These shepherds, they're out in the field, they're probably pretty ripe, after being out there for so long. They're not welcome in fine society, so to the stables they go. No big deal about that. And they're telling stories. Stories about hearing angels singing and all of this. Well, there's nothing better to do out there in the fields. Watching sheep all day, watching the grass grow, and to come up with stories. And one story's got to be better than the next, right? But then the wise men come. The Magi. The kings from the east. And suddenly we have this epiphany. Even the powers that be are recognizing this baby as someone special. As God's son. God among us. But that's the story for next week. That's the story for next week. This week we get the story of the Magi leaving. And all the world seems to be crumbling down around them. Because the Magi, you see, have decided they're not going to go back and report to King Herod like they said they would. They knew something was up with this fellow. Something was not quite right, and they were warned, and so they went back a different way. And King Herod is absolutely furious. Even the emperor of Rome once quipped that it would be better to be one of King Herod's pigs than to be one of King Herod's sons. Now, I don't know if King Herod raised pigs. It would have been unusual for a Jew to raise pigs. But the emperor's point was this. Since Jews don't eat pigs, they wouldn't be slaughtered. But King Herod had already slaughtered 2 of his sons because he thought they were trying to take his power. This was the man that they were dealing with. This is why the wise men didn't want to go back to King Herod. He was not a good guy. And he was absolutely furious that he had been tricked by the wise men. And so he sent out his soldiers to the area around Bethlehem and told them, ordered them to kill any young male boy under the age of 2. I hope your Christmas was better than that. Put things in perspective. An inflatable mattress doesn't sound too bad. A little squabbling amongst cousins and in-laws doesn't sound too bad. But that's the story of Jesus' birth. And King Herod is going after that tiny baby, trying to bring all the promises of Christmas to an end. All the peace, all the hope, all the joy, all the love, the light that was Christmas, King Herod was bound and determined to put a stop to. Did it work? Could he do it? No. Because the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph and said, Joseph, get out from here. Take your family and flee to Egypt. Go. And Joseph listened. He listened to the angel in that dream. And he took his family up, they left, and they beat the soldiers. They fled. And they were safe. But how many little boys were not? But the light of the world was kept safe. They stayed in Egypt, we don't know how long. But until the angel of the Lord again appeared to Joseph and said, you can go back now. For those who were seeking the child's life are now dead. King Herod had passed away. So Joseph, up he got, took his family with him back to Israel, only to find out that King Herod's son was sitting on the throne. And again, being warned, Joseph took his family to Galilee, to a little town called Nazareth. So Jesus could be called Jesus of Nazareth, a Nazarene. All of the terrible things that happened, all of the pain, all of the suffering, all of the challenges, all of the doubt, even arguably the most powerful man in the region trying to put a stop to Christmas, and they couldn't make it happen. They couldn't stop it. They couldn't stop the hope and the peace and the hope and the love and the joy that Christ was bringing into this world. They just couldn't make it happen. And that's the message of today. Because, folks, God is still trying to bring Christmas into our lives today. Through all the pain, through all the suffering, through all the doubt, through all of the inflatable mattresses and all of the infighting, God is still there. And God is still trying to bring the hope and the peace and the joy and the love that is Christmas, that little tiny baby, into our lives. Over the Christmas break, my mom and I sat down and watched Home Alone. Hadn't seen, this is part 1. Hadn't seen that movie in years. We sat down and watched it, and we laughed and had a really good time. But there's one part in there. Kevin, at one point, finds himself at church. And when he's at the church, there's an older man there that is his neighbor, And this older man has always scared him, has always scared Kevin. But at some point during the service, the older man gets up, comes over and sits next to Kevin, and they talk. The older man's trying to help Kevin. But during the conversation, the older man says, "Do you know why I'm in church today?" Kevin's like, "No, I don't know." The older man says, "I come here today because this is my only chance. This is the only chance I have to see my granddaughter." Kevin's like, "What? What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" And the old man goes on, "A long time ago, my son and I had a big argument. We had a big fight. And my son has forbidden me to see my granddaughter. And in fact, my son and I have not talked for many years." Kevin's like, "Well, why don't you give him a call? Just call him up." The old man said, "Because I don't know what he'll say. I don't know what he'll say." He was afraid. And Kevin's like, "What are you afraid for? What are you afraid of? What else can you do? He's already not talking to you. You've got everything to gain and nothing to lose." Sometimes God talks through little children. Sometimes God talks through a smile, a kind word. We just have to be willing to listen and open our hearts and minds to what God is trying to tell us. 2019 started out pretty rough for me and my family. David was having a tough time in school. I was having some struggles of my own. Wendy was on year 3 of her immigration process, waiting for the letters to come, and then we have to drive 400 miles to Omaha for 5 minutes of picture taking and fingerprinting. It was a frustrating time. And on one of these trips to Omaha, I woke up in the morning with these words in my mind. Why are you seeking the affirmation of men? And most of the people standing in our way were men. Why are you seeking the affirmation of men? I have already affirmed you. I have already affirmed you. And God has affirmed each and every one of you. I needed to hear those words for whatever reason. You can say that it was my conscience. You can say it was just a dream. You can say whatever. But I believe God speaks. God speaks through little children. God does speak through the smiles, through the kind words, through the gestures of other people, all of the things that have happened to us since we moved to Junction City. God speaks through all of that. And each and every one of you has been affirmed. God loves each and every one of you. And God is trying to find a way, seeking a way to speak to you, to bring Christmas, the hope, the peace, the joy, the love, the light that is Christmas into your life. Again, you can say it's just a dream. You can say it's just your conscience. You can say it's just a child. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. It's a time of miracles. And I choose to believe, that God is bringing Christmas